just, there it goes. And just hold off on questions to the very end, just so we can capture all of that and we can have discussions on it. Next slide, please. So today I'm joined by Michael Caviola. Thank you so much for joining us and just giving us an amazing, run through all this information. A little bit about Michael. He is our marketing and communications executive with decades of experience in everything from nonprofit work, government, corporate, all of it. So Michael has led the strategic communication within Compassion and Choices. He's done the media relations, everything from design and video production efforts. Before he did join us, we were not lucky right then there yet, but before he joined us, he did work at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and that is one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the nation. And alongside of that work, he also worked previously in the state government as a professional on Capitol Hill. And he also did TV production and journalism for C-SPAN and Discovery Channel. And I will hand it off to Michael now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Daisy. And thanks also to Nicole Reyes-Palma, who is working behind the scenes with us today. And thanks everybody for joining me. It is really special for me to be with you all here today. I'm really excited about getting to know some of you and talking about this subject, which is near and dear to my heart. As Daisy said, I have a background in journalism and producing content and working as a press secretary. And the reason I put all these jobs up here is mostly just to kind of launch into our presentation and say that what all of these positions have in common is storytelling. No matter where I was in any of these positions, what I was doing was telling stories. Whether it was stories about why someone should want to work for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, or why it was important to be informed about what your government is doing when I worked at C-SPAN, or why sharks are misunderstood during Shark Week when I worked at Discovery Channel. All of it was about, in service of telling a story in order that people could be more informed, and take action that could benefit them and their families. And so I feel like CNC is the natural outgrowth of that for me. It's really important work that we do. All of us here that are on this call are part of this effort to really change, transform what end-of-life care looks like in this country. And it's nothing short of a revolution that we're all involved with. And so let's go to the next slide, because I want to kind of get us started in thinking about that. Storytelling is really the basis for effective communication. So what we're going to talk about today, why is it important? What are some tips for being a good storyteller? How do we make sure we're inclusive in our storytelling and our messaging? And then when it comes to CNC and the movement that we're all involved with, what are some key messages that we can remember to take away from this? And I'm hoping to keep it pretty simple and just give you a few things you can walk away with that might be helpful to you. And then some specific advice on ways that you can engage, if you aren't already, in sharing your story and the story of your people and your loved ones. Let's go to the next slide. And it's time for a poll question to get us started. I'm curious. I'm going to ask a question about storytelling. Here it is. Which of these are rules of storytelling? Great stories are universal. Great stories have a character to root for. Great stories appeal to our deepest emotions, or all of the above. Give folks a second to answer. And I think most of you probably know where I'm going with this. All right, I think most people have had a chance to weigh in if they're going to. So let's go ahead and close the poll. And yeah, everybody is exactly right. It's all of the above. And a little bit more. Let's go to the next slide. Um, so yeah, so there are really these 6 rules of storytelling that I picked out from everybody knows Pixar, right? You know, the wonderful film studio that created Toy Story and all of these other, you know, Inside Out and just these really lovely films that are just so emotional and have these great messages and that people carry with them and pass on, you know, to their you know, loved ones and their kids and everybody. And so, and there's a quote here that I found from an author and actually a comedian who says, "Storytelling is the greatest technology humans have ever created." You know, going back to the days that we drew on cave walls, we've been telling stories to help us collaborate and work together and move ourselves forward. So yeah, these are kind of the 6 that I pulled out of Pixar's 22 Great Rules. Stories are universal, you know, and what's more universal than that we all live a life and we all that life comes to an end at some point for all of us. Um, Stories have a clear structure and a purpose. You know, we go into telling these stories for a reason. We want people to take something away from them. There's a character to root for, um, you know, and they appeal to our emotions. They often are surprising and unexpected, but they're simple and focused. Um, so as we think about sharing our stories, I wanted to just kind of put those six little rules in your head. Let's go to the next slide. So why are stories so important in our work in this movement? You know, as you may know, Compassion Choices is the oldest, largest, and most active nonprofit working to improve care, expand options for the end of life. Um, you know, for decades, we've been trying to change people's attitudes and practices, change public policies, change hearts and minds so that everybody can access the information, the care that they need, that they deserve, that they want. And, you know, facts and figures will only get you so far. What really, you know, changes people's hearts and minds are stories. So sharing our experiences and our hope that reaches people's hearts. When individuals like you share their stories publicly, that's our strongest message and our strongest messengers. This establishes that deep emotional connection with our audiences, helps the audiences understand and respect that people can make different decisions about what they might want at the end of life. Um, Even if they themselves might not choose that thing, they understand, oh, this is coming from the heart of this person that I'm hearing from. I can respect that. I can understand that. I have deep feelings too, and I have deep values about things. Um, and so that's a big reason why storytelling is so important in our work. Let's go to the next slide, please, Nicole. So here's some just a few tips for being a good storyteller. Know your audience. Understand what their needs, their desires, their pain points are. So, you know, whoever it is that you're speaking to, try to kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit and say, what is it that they're going to care about? I know it's important to me as the storyteller, but how might I, you know, kind of understand their perspective too to help me tell the story in the most effective way? Keeping it simple and focused, which we just talked about. Audiences know when they've had enough, you know, so keep it, you know, keep it simple as you can. Um, Keep them engaged, keep them hooked in your story, you know, until the end. Don't give it all away necessarily in the beginning. Um, don't be afraid of emotion. Again, with respect to, you know, making sure that you're taking care of yourself because these are deeply emotional issues. And so I do want to acknowledge that there is there is a need for, you know, taking care of yourself through this storytelling, especially if the story is of personal and deep emotional resonance for you, talking about yourself or one of your loved ones. Do take care of yourself, but then also don't be afraid of emotion if it does come up in the sense that it does get attention from folks. They do understand it creates empathy because we all experience these things deeply. You know, show action in your story. So rather than over explaining everything, talk about what you you can talk about what you're feeling, but talk about what you did, and what you're doing and how that has changed, like action alleviates anxiety. So when we take action, it does alleviate our, worries sometimes about things. Again, be clear about your message, understand what exactly it is that you're trying to tell, and practice. Don't be afraid to um, try it out on somebody that you trust, and kind of say, you know, um, is this hitting the way that I would like it to? Are you getting the meaning of this out? So those are just a few tips that I think have been helpful for me. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about inclusivity. We hear the word diversity a lot. I wanted to just kind of put this great quote up there to distinguish between diversity and inclusion. Diversity, you get invited to the party. Inclusion, you get asked to dance. Verna Myers, who's a great attorney and culture expert, said that inclusion is really about everyone is participating. The thing about CNC and this movement is that this movement doesn't belong to us, Compassionate Choices. It belongs to the folks on this call. It belongs to everyone out there who wants to change the way people are experiencing healthcare in this country and experiencing end-of-life care. So even though we are organized and have some wonderful donors who give us resources to be able to convene folks together to have these conversations, really this movement belongs to everybody. And so if we're going to continue to build the movement, we need to make sure that we're being inclusive about that. Let's go to the next slide, just a little bit more about this. So that means, as I'm saying, making sure that everybody is genuinely welcomed, and what we're giving folks is engaging and relevant. And people exist in many dimensions of identity, around age, race, gender, sexuality, disability. And so we want to make sure that, we understand that every person is facing their own unique combination of challenges and experiences and lived experiences. So as we kind of think through our storytelling, again, that's about kind of having that relationship to your audience and understanding that, while there are a lot of universal truths to what we talk about, people's lived experiences may be a little bit different based on, where they're coming from. Let's go to the next slide, talk a little bit more about those audiences. So who are we talking to when we are communicating? We are maybe talking to our fellow advocates, donors, and supporters. These are the fun, easier conversations to have, because we know that these folks are, generally speaking, they are supportive of the kind of work that we're doing. And so there your messages may be more around getting them to be more active, or take some additional action. So that may be what you're doing there. When we're talking to medical professionals and healthcare systems, that's a different kind of conversation. That's about giving them information, making sure that they have, the training that they need, that they understand how to talk to patients and how to talk to, and how to create policies and things like that are supportive of end of life care and people's individual options. We may be talking to policymakers. Again, these are legislators. These are others who are kind of in these positions of changing laws and changing rules around care. Again, we may be talking to faith leaders and faith-based organizations. Those are our big audience for this. A lot of folks, when it comes to planning for the end of life, that's where they start. They start with their faith community. And faith leaders have been a big part of our outreach efforts, especially over the last few years, as we understand like that if we're going to meet people where they are and have the conversations that we would like to have with them, and that folks should be having with each other, that's a place that we look for them. And then I think the most important one is neighbors, friends, loved ones, and everyone else. That's where I think all of us can have the greatest impact, because these are folks who have some level of trust and knowledge with us, or they don't really have much they don't have much knowledge about the movement and what we're doing, and that's an opportunity for us to introduce them to what we do. Let's go to the next slide. So no matter which of these audiences that we're talking to, we take the high road. That is one of the biggest takeaways I hope that you will take from uh, this session, is that every person's values, priorities, and beliefs are a little bit different, and we need to honor that. And so we don't want to argue with people. We're not going to win that, because we're really talking about such fundamental values. All we can do is share our strength and our stories and hope that folks understand that there are different ways to think about things. And maybe it does change their mind, but not maybe in that moment. It's an emotional response for folks to talk about death. Um, and that's going to impact how they make their decisions about end of life care. Be respectful if people are hostile. We don't have to actually sit there and take, anything abusive. We all should feel free to walk away and take care of ourselves in those situations. But we can be respectful, because in the long run, this is going to work for us to build our reputation, as a credible thought leader on end of life care. So as a reminder about all of the different areas that Passion Choices and this movement works in, it's advanced care planning, healthcare equity at the end of life, dementia in end of life care, patient-directed care in general. And then, of course, expanding options for folks to include VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, palliative care, hospice, medical aid in dying, pain care, life extending treatments. All of these things are things that we work on, because these are all different options that everyone should have access to, we believe. Again, it's up to each individual person in consultation with their people to decide what's right for them. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about that work and some of the key messages that that I think that if some of you may already know some of these, and these may be kind of a refresher for you. But if you haven't heard some of these before, these are sort of some of the easy key messages that I would like for you to take away from this, that will help you to talk about this. So when it comes to advanced care planning, this is a loving act that we can do for each other. Having those conversations with your people, your loved ones, your family, your chosen family, about what you want is a gift to them. Choosing who will speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. That's a healthcare proxy or a power of attorney. That's super important. And that person may not be the most immediate person that you think of. It may be someone else, because it may be that, oh, my daughter, my spouse, this person who is very close to me, I don't know that they're going to be aligned with me on what I want. They may be conflicted about that. And so choosing that person is really important. And then lastly, putting it all in writing, filling out that advance directive, that, living will, that pulsed, whatever documents, obviously that one's in consultation with your clinician, but writing it all down. So again, taking this with you, it's a loving act to do that advanced care planning. That's the message. Let's go to the next key message. Autonomy at the end of life is a right. Sometimes there's some controversy about that word right. I like it, so I'm putting it in here. I think it's a right for people to be able to make their own end of life care decisions that's based on their values. They should consult with their doctor, their clinician, their loved ones, and if desired, their faith and spiritual leaders. But at the end of the day, that autonomy is, what we're here, what we're all about as a movement. No one else should be telling you, what is right for you at the end of life. And then one more key message is around including the person's loved ones and sharing these stories. And when we don't share, this is what our research shows, that when we don't share the person's loved ones are supportive of them, be they friends, family, chosen family, they're people. I like to say that person's people, because it's the most inclusive, I think, way to describe it, because everybody thinks of that as different, as a different group. So when we share stories, it's, yes, we can talk about that autonomy piece that we just talked about, but it's important to know, for folks to know um, that their loved ones are supportive too, because most of the time they are. If they're not, that's an unusual story, and that's something that's worth highlighting. But then then you find folks who are supportive of you, because you will. Um, come to CNC, we will be supportive of you, and you're right to make choices that are right for you. Okay, let's move on to poll question number 2. We're going to get into some more tactical stuff now around things that you can do, actions that you can take, people that you can talk to. So let's ask a question around what actions have you taken on behalf of your work with CNC? So choose all that apply to you. You've talked to a friend about end of life planning. Have you written a letter to the editor? Have you hosted an event of some kind? And that could be, something as big as a fundraising thing. It could be a having 2 people in your kitchen to talk about, filling out an advance directive together. Um, could be anything. If you've talked to a stranger about end of life planning, that's another option there. All right, so folks are weighing in on this. We'll give them another minute or two to think about it. And I love this. 5 people have talked to a friend about end of life planning. 4 people have talked to a stranger about it. I love seeing that. That is amazing. This is a very active group, and I love that. And 2 people have written an LTE. This is fantastic. Hosting an event, that's kind of a big deal. I don't know that a lot of people are doing that on a daily basis, but this is fantastic stuff. This is great. All right. Well, we'll close that down. I'm hoping everybody who wanted to weigh in has had a chance to. I am super excited to see that how many folks have talked to somebody about end of life planning. Um, let's talk about these actions and kind of how they how they engage people. Um, the more present you are in engaging, the more likely you are to get engagement from your efforts. So the more of your presence there is, the more likely that you'll get people to really respond um, and heed your call to action, so to speak. But the more present you are, the more it requires of you, and the more time it takes. So mass communication takes less time to reach more people. So it does reach more people, but it can have less engagement. Both are necessary and important. Um, both are part of the sort of the balanced diet of communication, so to speak, that we need to be engaged with. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about those things. So when you look at high presence, high engagement, that's talking to that friend or that acquaintance and saying, something that I did was I had a conversation with my loved one about this, about what's important to me at the end of life, and we ended up filling out an advance directive about it. Have you done that? Is that something that you've thought about? Um, Obviously talking to a stranger about this is amazing. So if you are out somewhere, I find that I have these conversations a lot, like on airplanes with people, because if they ask me what I do and I tell them, every once in a while there's someone who will say, "Oh, okay, interesting," and then go back to their book or whatever it is. But I will say 9 times out of 10, people consider that a permission to open up to me about what's going on with them, because this is such a universal topic. And someone will say, "Oh, my mom just went into hospice care," or um, I had a conversation with my dad about, he said, if I ever get to this point, pull the plug on me. And so we talk about what that actually means and how to kind of get a little bit more detail from him about that. Um, So yeah, so these are kind of like, and calling and visiting your legislator if that's something that, there's something going on in your area, your state. It doesn't have to be a state legislator, could be a county commissioner or a city official. So legislator is probably maybe not the right word there. I put it in there, so I'm wrong, but yeah, it could be anybody. That's a policymaker. All right, let's go to the next slide and talk about the lower presence. Again, could be lower engagement, but it's mass communication, so still important. Writing that letter to the editor, people will see that. People will see that, and it makes a difference. And or sending the email to the legislator. Again, they will see that. They will. I have sat on the floor of a state legislature, watched a bill come up, watched the state legislature open up on their laptop and look at the emails that they've gotten, because what their staff will do is drag them into a folder, for and against this bill. They'll open them up, they'll read through them because they want to see what are their constituents saying. Um, so it really does have an impact. You'll be so surprised, or maybe you won't be, about how much they do care about what their voters are saying. Because for people to actually take the time to do it, to send the email, to make the phone call, to visit, shows just how active that person is and how much they care about it. Um, Forwarding a CNC email to a friend, that's a fantastic, kind of lower presence thing that you can do, but can be very effective. Can at least start the conversation with them. And again, participating on social media, we love that. We love it when folks are following us on Facebook and again, these may be quote unquote small actions, but in the aggregate, they add up. So that's sort of the thing, is that, like, yes, they may be lower presence for one individual person, but when lots of people write letters to the editor, when lots of people send emails to their legislature, when lots of people are participating on Facebook, that's a movement, so to speak. So it's both. It takes that high touch, personal storytelling approach, but it also takes that, mass communication, everyone together moving in the same direction. That's what makes a movement. So let's go to the next slide. So if you need some help, it doesn't sound like it based on the responses that I saw. We've got some pretty engaged folks here, which is awesome. But Nicole, Daisy, and I are all available. We're all here in Florida, and ready to help with, if you want to get engaged and tell these stories. If you're looking for a little bit of a primer on how to write a letter to the editor, we can do that. I think we've got a nice handout on that, kind of how to approach that, and lots of ways to get involved. So that is the end of my official presentation, but I am here and ready to chat with you, your questions, your comments about this presentation, or anything about, CNC's, communications and marketing efforts in general as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So we are about to stop recording and we're going to open it up for questions. Give us just one moment and we'll get started on that.